21. The rehearsals. All was well so far on the Augusti path. Ryan had met Zanbato as expected, beat up Saren at the harbor, and now repeated the exact same conversation which would lead him to crash at Jamie's house. All was well and good, to the sound of crashing waves against the piers. "I have to be sure about something," Luigi asked the courier. "Are you a snitch or a double agent?" "Well, I'm not really on anyone's side," Ryan replied, but then his mouth acted on its own. "But I'm a carnival infiltrator, yes." "Or not." Everyone present turned to look at him, a tense silence settling in. The grunts raised their weapons, while Zanbato's face turned from shocked, to disappointed, and finally, to furious.
Uh-oh.
Okay, 2 lessons learned. 1. Ryan hated truth-tellers. Hated them, with a passion. 2. Zanbato could make sashimi out of people with his laser sword. Ryan wouldn't look at sushi the same way ever again. But this time, it would be different. The courier had rehearsed the perfect misleading answers. Luigi's power compelled Ryan to say the truth, but only according to the teller's exact words. "I have to be sure about something," Luigi asked him again. "Are you a snitch or a double agent?" "I can't snitch on a group I haven't officially joined yet, and I am not a double agent." Technically, he was a triple one. "Are you a mole?" "Of course I'm not a mole, I'm human." "There. Saved. He did it. Okay, I should work on my wording," Luigi sighed but didn't give up. "Are you, or do you intend, to relay information about us to another organization?" "Well, yes, I intend to." "Hell, I already did." "God damn it." Okay, 3rd time's the charm. Through timing and intelligence, Ryan had skillfully navigated through the chain of causality to avoid the fated question. He had put on the charm, befriended everyone, distracted the grunts with funny anecdotes. Now, the courier and Zanbato prepared to return to the Plymouth Fury, and go eat some delicious pizzas. "Hey, quick save," Luigi asked, as they took a few steps towards the car. "Before you go, there are a few questions I must ask every new recruit." "Luigi, seriously, please, don't do it," Ryan replied, his eyes pleading. "For your sake, don't say this. It won't end well, I swear it won't." "Sorry, protocol." "Are you a snitch?" Yes, I am." "Is that what you want me to say, Luigi? Is that what you want me to say?" Quicksave breathed deeply, fighting off his rising frustration. "Luigi," Ryan pointed a finger at the truth-teller, as everyone raised their weapons at the courier's face. "We're going to have a problem, you and I." "Where's Luigi?" Zanbato asked Grunt One when the truth-teller failed to show up at the harbor, leaving only the henchman to deal with the operation. "Wasn't he supposed to take care of the shipment?" "Sorry, he was attacked yesterday night," Grunty said, carrying Luigi's cell phone. "Apparently, he would have to fill in for the made man. He's at the hospital right now, and he'll be out of commission for a while." "What?" The news shocked Jamie, who clearly hadn't been informed. "By whom?" "Some crazy psychopath with a hockey mask and stick, from what I heard." "It's a very dangerous sport, hockey," Ryan said absent-mindedly, looking at the sea. "I don't recommend it."
"Yeah."
"That was crazy," Grunt One nodded. "Apparently Luigi returned home late for a party, perfectly normal. He starts opening his home's door and then bam. Some Friday the 13th crazy jumps out of the shadows, breaks his jaw with a hockey stick, beats him up for a while, and then leaves." "Why?" Jamie almost chortled. "Why Luigi? Was it a robbery?" "No, the maniac didn't even take his money," Grunt One replied. "Maybe it was a hate crime?" The attacker looked really, Passionate according to witnesses, Grunty said. At least from what I heard. Well, Luigi sleeps around a lot, a real homewrecker, Grunt 2 pointed out. Maybe it was a jealous boyfriend? It had to happen one day. Or it could be the meta. Zanbato crossed his arms. But then how did they learn where he lived? It actually took Ryan more time to find the hockey equipment than Luigi's address. Nobody played that sport nowadays. Quick save, you're staying at a hotel, right? Jamie asked Ryan. I think you should crash at my place for the night, just in case. The city isn't safe at all. You don't say, Ryan replied. After that, events happened as predicted. Jamie invited him home, they played poker, went to Vulcan's factory, and Ryan saved the pandas from extinction. Ryan's mind had long entered autopilot, as he let his sense of timing guide him forward. The autopilot wasn't really a sub-power, simply a state his conscious mind entered when he couldn't be bothered to live through the same events over and over again. It was no different than daydreaming while repeating a mind-numbing task. Humans were bound by the laws of causality. With a few exceptions, he constantly lived through an endless theater rehearsal. People held no mystery to him after a while, always reacting the same way to the exact same things. They forgot him and relearned the same information, over and over again. They became machines, and Ryan the only human in the room. The repetition would drive anyone insane. But it was necessary suffering to reach the perfect ending, and soon, it would finally end. Everything would turn right when Ryan found Len. He was certain of it. His cell phone beeping snapped him back to reality, interrupting the flow of causality. It took Ryan a second to remember when and where he was when he snapped back to consciousness. Extensive looping and repetition often eroded the genome's perception of reality, especially when his power noticed an alteration in his personal timeline. Ryan checked his phone, while Lanka had already left for Vulcan's factory, the panda laying defeated on the ground. The message involved a photo of Rust Town's orphanage, intact, and a text below. Psyshock taken care of. Children are safe. Thanks for the tip. Ryan lived for such surprises, good or bad. When he noticed Pluto and her bodyguard talking with Zanbato, Ryan expected events to repeat until he met Vulcan. The Augustes underboss froze the exact same way upon meeting him, and said the exact same thing. You, Pluto asked quick save. Moi? Ryan answered, preparing to repeat the same conversation. Have we met before? This surprised Ryan, as he didn't expect that answer. Possibly, I'm unforgettable. I'm sure of it, we already met, Pluto replied, her tone turning from curious to confused. Who are you? Boss, what is it? Her bodyguard asked Pluto, while Lanka stood still next to Ryan. The underboss' mere attention terrified her into silence. He's marked, Pluto said. But I don't remember him. And shit. Did her power somehow mark him across time? Is something wrong, boss? Jamie joined the conversation, carefully backing Ryan up with Ki-young. Who is your new recruit, Zanbato? Ryan prepared to joke when Jamie invaded his personal space, putting a hand on his shoulder. You speak to her when talked to, he all but said out loud. Quick save, Zanbato answered Pluto's question in the courier's place. He's a violet. Time stopper. Not a blue? Pluto observed Ryan with an intense stare, as if trying to peer into his soul. The courier couldn't explain why, but he felt a growing pressure around him. The air thickened, something weighing on his mind. Cancel would have noticed a memory alteration or info hazard, Pluto's female bodyguard pointed out. Maybe your powers interfere with each other somehow. Pluto didn't seem convinced, her eyes set on Ryan. The courier whistled and looked away innocently, while Zanbato came to his defense. Quicksave may be odd, but he is reliable, the maid man said. He helped us fight off Saren yester. What's your name, Quicksave? She asked Ryan, completely dismissing Zanbato's words. Your real name. Oh, I'm Ryan, he replied with mock reverence, alleviating the tension. Ryan Romano. I'm immortal, but don't tell anyone. No one lives forever, she replied coldly. I've got places to be right now, but I will call you back soon to clear this up. Play stupid, play smart, run, or say no, and you will die. The way she threatened him. No, wait, that wasn't a threat. That was a statement. If Ryan didn't follow her order, he would die. The end. The courier and his group watched the underboss leave with her bodyguard in complete silence until they were out of sight. Nobody dared to speak up at first, so Ryan broke the ice. So, who's up for Chinese? He asked. Shit, Lanka said, letting out a breath of relief. Blabbermouth, what the fuck did you do? What didn't I do? Ryan replied, just as confused. Or would you prefer Italian? This is serious, Quicksave, Jamie said. That woman is Pluto, Augustus' sister and underboss. Her interest is not a good thing. I suggest you follow her lead without question, Ki-young said, her face full of concern. She can kill with a thought. Why is she even here? Lanka asked her team leader. The boss gave the go to hit the metagang hard, Jamie replied, his arms crossed. Vulcan will take command of the cleanup since she's been itching to test her new weapons in the field, and Pluto loaned her the killer 7-hit squad. I say it's finally time we clean up the trash. Especially after what they did to poor Luigi, Ki-young said with a frown. To attack him in front of his own house, if you can't feel safe at home anymore. Are we sure that it's the meta who did that though? Lanka asked, skeptical. I mean, it was just a guy with a hockey cross. If it was a meta, there should have been a lot more casualties. It's probably an unpowered junkie they paid off, Jamie replied. The metagang isn't a big group. It would make sense for them to outsource their dirty work. Ryan listened to the discussion, trying to puzzle out the sequence of events. It appeared Shroud had followed through with his promise and stopped targeting the Augusti with assassinations. With no one to divert their attention, the criminal syndicate had decided to focus entirely on wiping out the metagang. Ryan wasn't sure how Pluto's newfound interest in him would play out though. It could threaten his entire infiltration mission, and he had to figure out how she could identify him even after he altered the timeline. God damn it, every time he made progress, a new problem arose. No, wait, it didn't matter. Ryan only had to play along until Vulcan told him how to contact or reach Len. He didn't have to stay with the Augusti longer than that. And if they tried to force him into one fetch quest after another, well, it wouldn't end well for them. They entered Vulcan's factory next, with Zanbato lecturing Ryan on how he should talk to the capo once more. Ryan barely paid attention, having already disregarded the advice the first time, but the tense meeting with Pluto made the courier reconsider how to treat with the mercurial genius. With already one high-ranked Augusti suspecting him and his long-awaited meeting with Len on the line, there was no point in alienating another. Even if he hated it, Quicksave would have to behave. Ryan and Co. entered Vulcan's workshop, the courier's eyes immediately drawn to the enormous armor. It was odd to look at this enormous machine again after the genius tried to murder Ryan with it. Instead of teasing Vulcan about her height this time, Ryan focused entirely on the armor while Zanbato exchanged introductions with the capo. Vulcan, however, quickly noticed Ryan's interest in her work. Impressed yet, she asked Ryan, clearly expecting him to flatter her. Interesting design, especially the miniature fusion reactor, Ryan replied innocently. But you should coat the joints with a protective, anti-shock layer. Someone might break them by applying selective pressure. I thought of that, she replied, a bit surprised by his insight. But I haven't found an alloy composite which may resist the intense movement friction without causing an arm jamming. Considering its intended target, I favored speed over defense. Ryan remembered how Wyvern stomped on the machine last time but kept that amusing anecdote for himself. Why not a plastic derivative then? Vulcan sat on her workbench, a flash of interest crossing her face. Are you a genius, quick save? Not really, but I have experience with genius tech. He absent-mindedly tossed her the A-bomb. And, well, pretty much everything. Everything? Wyvern's nemesis observed the bomb with fascination. Such a beautiful design. Except ice skating. Now that he thought of it, Ryan really should dedicate a loop to mastering that skill, in case he had to fight Ghoul again. You want to keep the bomb? Can I bribe you with it? I can keep it? By now, Vulcan looked like a child receiving a surprise Christmas present. Is that what love at first sight looks like? Lanka mused with a deadpan face. I thought it was a lie. Careful with your tongue, Sphere, Vulcan replied, keeping the bomb. Quick save, I want you in my division. You start tomorrow. Wow, 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 she was skipping a lot of steps there. Jamie immediately tried to defend his imaginary purity. I thought he might do well with Mercury, he cleared his throat, and Pluto wants to check up on him. She doesn't like him. Pluto? Vulcan shrugged. She's a paranoid bitch, but I know how to handle her. She didn't even want me on the team when I joined, and yet, here I am. Don't worry about her, quick save, I'll cover you. Was she actually being nice? The contrast with the short fuse, violent criminal who tried to murder Ryan a few loops ago couldn't be clearer. As for Mercury, I scouted quick save first, and he'll be wasted on minion work, the genius added with smug disdain, brushing Jamie off. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in long-term employment, Ryan replied. I'm looking for Len, black hair, blue eyes, Marxist-Leninist. The underdiver. I know she has an undersea base and you're in contact with her, Ryan said, putting his hands behind his back. If you could send me there, I would greatly appreciate it. You're well informed, Vulcan replied, before making a strange face. Contact isn't the term I would employ with her. We're more like genius pen pals, trading texts sometimes. I can make a meeting happen, though not for free. Ryan thought she wanted him to invite for dinner as payment, but instead, she still ordered them to ruin Wyvern's movie for petty revenge. Some things never changed. Still, he looked around for hidden cameras or a bomb. Things couldn't work out so well, could they? Come back tomorrow when the work is done and your trouble with Pluto is solved, Ryan, Vulcan said. I'll give you your reward, and change your mind about the long-term employment part. The courier noticed she spoke to him on a first-name basis now. Nothing better than an A-bomb to earn a woman's affection. That worked out well, Lanka said when they left the factory, quite astonished. I thought you would fuck this up somehow, Blabbermouth, but she seems to like you. Are you all right? Jamie asked Ryan once they were out of the factory. Why the question, Yojimbo? The courier asked back. You look subdued, the swordsman pointed out. I can't say it's a bad thing, but you seem to feel down, man. Sharp. In truth, Ryan didn't feel so well because he was very close to reaching his goal. He had eliminated Shroud's interference, things were moving smoothly, and unless Pluto decided to kill him outright, he should be able to meet back up with Len tomorrow. The path seemed clear. He thought he would feel excitement, joy at having overcome all obstacles in the way, but Ryan couldn't shake off a vague sentiment of unease. Like someone having trained all their life to climb Mount Everest, and having the summit in sight. He was afraid of being disappointed. 22. Speech checks. And so, Vulcan's biblical judgment was passed upon the heathens at Dynamis. Wyvern's movie ended in rats and pestilence, like the previous Auguste loop. It saddened Ryan to ruin Adam Cat's first movie appearance, especially after befriending him earlier. His adorable feline sidekick hated these commercial ventures though, so no harm done. They would make up later. When the made man returned to the house in his beautiful car, the courier almost expected Shroud to blow up the place again. Ryan had never gone farther than this moment, so he couldn't tell what would happen next. Ki-young didn't seem agitated in the Plymouth Fury's back, so her rat sentries should be fine. The courier almost wished for an unforeseen disaster, to spice things up. When Ryan noticed Vulcan's enormous armor parked in the garden right next to a black Lamborghini, and girls waiting at the front door, he realized someone upstairs had granted his prayer. Instead of summoning them to her lair, Pluto had decided to visit her employees herself. Besides her usual bodyguard and Vulcan, the underboss also enjoyed the company of a young woman Ryan hadn't seen before, a petite, smiling blonde with pale blue eyes, who kept her hair in 2 braids. She wore a white sweater and pants, and Ryan guessed she probably had Slavic origins from her facial features. She brought 2 of the Killer 7, Chitter said, uneasy at the sight. You're ready for this? Jamie asked Ryan, as the courier parked the car. Well, it feels like I'll have to pass hard speech checks or fight a difficult boss, Ryan replied. But that means I'm close to the end. You aren't going to beat that one, I can already tell you, Lanka said at the back, everyone getting out of the car. The group approached Pluto's own, with everyone tensing up as the underboss looked at them. Even Ryan remained quiet at first, mostly because he knew his long-awaited reunion with Len was just around that corner. Boss, Jamie cleared his throat, I didn't expect to see you here. That's the purpose of a surprise inspection, Pluto replied dryly, her eyes settling on Ryan. Our business is with him only, Zanbato. Your team can do as they wish. If you don't mind, I would like to be present, the made man replied calmly. If only as moral support to the new recruit. I'll stay too, Lanka said.
Aww.
I knew you cared, Ryan taunted her. If she kills you, Blabbermouth, I'll be the one saddled with corpse disposal, she replied. I would rather do less work. I guess I will stay too then, Ki-young replied, although she clearly didn't want to. A rat climbed on her shoulder, like a Pikachu. Just don't mind me. Pluto shrugged it off, and then immediately started barking orders. Sparrow, search his person, Vulcan, check for any genius tech he might have. Cancel, you know the drill. I'm already on it, the blonde said with a Bulgarian accent, before grinning at Ryan. Hey! I'm Cancel, but you can call me Greta. Nice to meet you, Ryan. Oh hi, Greta. The courier waved a hand at her, surprised by her niceness. I'm immortal, but don't tell anyone. Pluto's female bodyguard, Sparrow, immediately started feeling up Ryan with her big hands, searching everywhere. She removed his mask, his hat, his jacket, and then started to look into places better left unexplored. You know, lady, if you wanted to look at my underwear, the courier said as she checked a private place. You could just ask. I'm young, easy, and available. I might take you up on that, Sparrow replied with an amused smile. Over time, a pile of weapons grew next to Ryan, Vulcan swiftly examining them one at a time like Ordiovra, until she hit the plat de resistance. How did you pack so many lasers inside such a tiny space? Vulcan asked, examining the rabbit plushie with astonished eyes. Even my armor doesn't have that many. One at a time, Ryan shrugged it off. What is this? Pluto asked, curious. Some toy? It's quite cute, Ki-young said. A toy with enough firepower to wipe out a small city, Vulcan said, more and more fascinated by the plushie's dark power. Can I? No, the courier denied her. But. No. Ryan said firmly. I'm not loaning it. A-bombs, fine, but something this dangerous? No way in hell. It couldn't end in anything but tragedy. Vulcan looked deeply disappointed, but didn't push the issue. It's exceptionally lethal, she told Pluto, putting the plushie back on the weapon pile. But it doesn't cause memory alteration. None of his weapons can do that. Neither can his power, Cancel said. Or at least I don't think so. He's as violet as they come. Oh, you're a white? Ryan asked, the girl nodding. One of the mightiest. Pluto smiled at Ryan. Cancel can negate the powers of everyone within a certain radius. My brother accepted, of course.
Ah.
That's funny. Cancel immediately pouted. Why don't you check for yourself then, huh? Challenge accepted. Ryan immediately attempted to stop time, and nothing happened. No feedback, no world freezing with the power of his mind, not even an itching sensation. Nothing at all. His ability simply refused to activate. He tried again, but he kept having performance issues. His annoyance must have shown on his face because a smug, victorious smile appeared at the edge of Greta's lips. Well, that wasn't good. That wasn't good at all. His save point shouldn't be affected, but if Cancel negated the automatic trigger, then if Ryan perished close to her, he might die for good. Miss Pluto, have I told you I find you extraordinarily elegant and beautiful? Ryan said. When in doubt, flatter them. Pointless, but thank you, Pluto replied with false affability, before turning to Cancel. Still nothing? If it was memory manipulation, I should have purged the effect, the girl replied. Whether it was blue, green, yellow, or even violet. Pluto said nothing. Instead, she looked for a pocket inside her dress and grabbed a smoke. Sparrow brought a lighter and set it ablaze just as her mistress put the cancer stick in her mouth. I control death, Pluto told Ryan, Jamie's group freezing still at her words. The metaphysical concept of death, the end of life. While I cannot count them, I can sense the weight of a person's years. And if I'm not mistaken, quick save, you're the oldest person I've ever met. Far older than anyone should be. Now that I've taken a good long look at you, I would peg you as. She breathed a cloud of smoke on Ryan's face. Somewhere in the triple digits, and closer to 4 than 2. Oh my, that long? Ryan had lost count after the first century. 3 digits? Ki-young frowned. That doesn't make sense. He seems a bit young for an old geezer, Lanka replied with a shrug. Are you sure, boss? I don't mean to doubt you. You are, Pluto cut her off, as sharp as a blade. She didn't raise her tone, but it silenced all critics. My power is never wrong. So quick save, care to explain this to me? The way she phrased it, Ryan knew that Pluto would either spare or kill him depending on the answer. No choice then. I knew this day would come. Everyone glanced at the courier, who did his best guilty culprit confession impersonation. Okay, I admit it, the courier let out a long, long sigh. I lied. I lied to you. To everyone. About my power. I suspected as much, Vulcan said, now listening with rapturous attention. I can't imagine how one could stop time and still be able to act. You should evolve in a lightless world, where every item is a deadly projectile. So, you lied about the nature of your power to keep an ace in the hole? Pluto asked, playing with her cancer stick. A sensible thing to do, especially with strangers. I applaud your caution. I guess you aren't as stupid as you look, Lanka teased him, Jamie elbowing her. How does it actually work then? Pluto asked. When I freeze time, I actually jump into another parallel universe, usually to avoid death, Ryan lied through his teeth. One alternate world very close to mine. I overlap with the me of that world and we become one. Ryan expected denial, but much to his surprise, nothing of the sort came up. That's awesome, Greta all but swooned. Does that mean you can become a woman? Like fuse with an alternate version of you that is a girl? How does it work? Once, I spent 3 months Chinese, Ryan lied, the bigger the better. And I became American, twice. Wait, that's how you cheated at cards. Lanka immediately focused on the important tidbit. You asshole, you jumped universes whenever you had a bad hand. Huh, that's interesting, Jamie said, crossing his arms. That puts some of your comments at the casino in a new light. That explains the chronoradio too, Ki-young added. Chronoradio? Vulcan frowned. A radio that listens through time? Multiple pasts, Ryan corrected. You can't have more than one past, Lanka grunted in the background. A radio that can tap into alternate timelines? The more she observed his technology, the more Vulcan seemed fascinated with it. How does it work? It's really complicated but... I'm a genius, she interrupted Ryan. How does it work? Observer effect, my smug friend, Ryan replied with a shrug, unwilling to elaborate much. The observed state changes depending on the observation method. It works with past events? Vulcan's eyes widened, as she struggled to grasp the underlying theory. Meanwhile, Pluto's face was undecipherable. Finally, she uttered a single word, okay. Wow, you guys took it a lot better than I thought, Ryan admitted. People usually think I'm pulling their legs when I say that. My niece Minerva can interact with parallel universes, although she's a blue. I wonder how your respective abilities would interact. Could be interesting, the underboss examined the courier with a whole new look, trying to puzzle it out. So the abnormal number of years I sense is because you fuse with your copies and your metaphysical weight accumulates? Could it be that you marked an alternate version of him, Sparrow said. And your power followed him through his jumps? Possible, she admitted. Though the fact I marked him at all is a warning sign. You mark every genome you meet, Vulcan pointed out brashly. It's quite vulgar, frankly. Pluto ignored the jab and observed Ryan closely, who gave her a smile in return. Search his car for any devices, she ordered her cronies next, I'm not entirely convinced yet. Sparrow examined the Plymouth Fury as thoroughly as she checked Ryan's body, searching under the seats, the trunk, and the hidden compartments. She clearly had experience with these things. Vulcan, meanwhile, examined the chronoradio, checking multiple channels. When she opened the car hood and looked inside, Sparrow's bored face turned into one of confusion, then astonishment. My God! What do? Ki-young peeked inside, and then screamed in horror. The rat on her shoulder was so startled, it fell to the ground. Jamie immediately rushed to his girlfriend's side, taking her in his arms, and frowning at the car hood. Of course, everyone gathered to peek inside, much to Ryan's confusion. Why such a reaction? Even the unflappable Pluto had raised an eyebrow, and Lanka was at a loss of words. What the fuck? Ryan. Jamie looked at the courier as if he were deranged. Why is there a brain inside your car? Ryan peeked beneath the car hood and understood what they meant. Below the engines and near the heat pump, there was a hidden hatch which Sparrow had opened, revealing an elongated brain floated in a jar of green liquid, the spine linked to cables. Oh, my, Ryan said, scratching his hair. I completely forgot about that. I will ask again. Jamie's voice had turned deadly cold, while Ki-young hid behind her boyfriend. Why do you keep a brain in storage? It's not in storage, it's connected to my car. I mean, how did you think the self-driving worked? The chrono radio? You believed it was magic or artificial intelligence? Seriously, Jamie was okay with Ryan keeping an A-bomb, but he drew the line at a brain-driven car? Where was the logic in that? That's so messed up, Lanka muttered to herself. You abducted a complete stranger and extracted his brain, because you couldn't get a driver's license? Oh, I see where it's going. Ryan raised his hands. You think I abducted homeless people off the streets with the help of a creepy hunchback assistant? And that his name was Igor? It said something about Pluto and Vulcan that they looked more curious than disturbed by the possibility. And Greta kept smiling, fascinated. It should have looked cute, but now it seemed downright disturbing. It's not a human brain, Vulcan pointed out. The shape doesn't fit. It looks like a manta ray's, but, no, I don't recognize it. Some of the parts are clearly artificial. It's homegrown, Ryan replied. Entirely synthetic. Explain this, Pluto said. Now. I worked a few jobs for geniuses in the past, and usually, they paid me with tech rather than cash. Like my A-bomb. He drew quite a few angry glares at this, except Vulcan, who was more and more interested. The courier powered through. I couldn't get the chrono radio to work due to lack of processing power, and I wanted my car to drive by itself. A client proposed to solve both problems at once. By putting a brain in your car? Lanka deadpanned. One of his specialties lied in wetware computers, Ryan replied. He had like, hundreds of brains in jars. He grew them like weed. So it's not sentient? Ki-young asked, looking at the brain matter with an anxious face. It's just a computer? Of course it's not sentient, Ryan protested. You think I would do half the things I do with my car if there was a real person inside? Do you take me for a savage? Nobody answered that. Jamie kept his arms crossed. I don't know how to feel about this. Me neither, his girlfriend admitted. Pluto, who had remained completely unflappable so far, threw her smoke on the lawn and glanced at Vulcan. What do you think? He clearly had multiple geniuses work on his car, and I think I see a miniature particle accelerator connected to the brain, the weapon designer replied, before closing the car hood. It will take me a few days to review everything, but I doubt any of his devices can be used for memory manipulation. I see, Pluto said, turning to Ryan next. Quick save. Yeez? You're on probation for now. I'm not entirely sold yet, but I will give you the benefit of the doubt. Don't make me come back. She glanced at Vulcan next. Jasmine, he's yours to do as you wish. If he fucks up, I'll hold you responsible. Jamie seemed a bit disappointed in the background, perhaps believing she would assign Ryan to his own superior's division. But he knew better than to mouth off to that lethal woman. Without a word nor
goodbye,
Pluto considered the matter settled and moved towards her car. See you soon. Greta waved at everyone, while she and Sparrow went for the Lamborghini. Crisis averted. No sooner after they left, Vulcan tried to buy Ryan on the spot. Okay, 3,000, she declared out of nowhere, unable to resist her newfound feelings for the courier. To work as my lab assistant, and let me examine your rabbit. Does a toy warrant more attention than a brain-driven car? Ki-young whispered to Jamie, who shrugged his shoulders. He had long stopped trying to make sense out of the situation. $3,000 per month? Ryan smiled smugly at this cute offer. My, you're cheap. Per day, Vulcan corrected the courier. Half cash, half wired. Ryan merely raised an eyebrow. Lanka was the one who almost died of a stroke on the spot. Per day? For him? He cheats at cards. I will make you your own armor, everything else you want, Vulcan continued, completely ignoring the minion. Drugs, enough horse to break your nuts on, your own personal lab? And of course, your girl. You grease the hinges, the door opens, Ryan replied. My main quest first, then we'll see about the side quests. All right, fair, Vulcan replied, moving towards her armor. We're going. To the moon? To your friend, Vulcan replied as if he was saying something stupid. There's a second seat in my suit's cockpit, so climb in. Finally. He was going to see Len at long last. 23. The reunion. When Vulcan said she had a second spot in her cockpit, Ryan thought he would have his own baby seat at the back. But as it turned out, the genius was more fond of motorcycle designs than cars. People are gonna talk, Ryan said, holding Vulcan by the waist with his chest against her back as the mech accelerated. The crazy woman had designed her cockpit like a motorbike, with screens and computer interfaces at the front. The bench seat did allow for 2 people inside, but Ryan had to lean on the pilot due to a lack of space. If outsiders could watch them, they would probably find their current position suspicious. Let them, Vulcan replied. Due to the oceanic pressure, the mech had entered some sort of alternate mode to protect its weaker parts, contracting its joints, shielding the cameras, and using only sonars and thermal sensors for navigation. From outside, the armor must have looked like a bulky lump of metal. I don't give a shit. Interesting choice of design though, Ryan said, hearing the faint noise of the fusion reaction powering the suit. Was that a personal preference or? Dynami's elite soldiers are trained to target the center of mass, Vulcan cut him off. Ryan had noticed that she was very fond of lording over her knowledge whenever the occasion presented itself. Since most armor cockpits are located there, this means enemies usually shoot straight at your vitals in a fight. I used to overcompensate for that with thicker shielding, but that's pretty limited when you fight someone who can bench press tanks.
Ah.
I get it, Ryan realized, as he felt the mech slow down. With your current design, the cockpit is actually located between the shoulders, thus away from the area where most soldiers shoot at. This improves the chances of successful ejection in a pinch, but you must also cut down cockpit space to avoid making the frame unwieldy. I use a neural interface to control most of the systems, she replied, briefly putting a hand in her hair. Ryan noticed some kind of black cranial implant hidden below her bun. This removes the need for systems in the cockpit, except emergency ones. Oh, so that explained how she could command her suit from afar. Ryan wondered about her range. I suppose it's an even trade in exchange for the close, uncomfortable physical proximity. If you use your hands to feel me up, I'll castrate you, she warned him. I can already feel your cock in my back. Gee, when you said you were easy, you weren't kidding. You don't want me to upgrade the difficulty to hard mode right now. Vulcan chuckled at the dirty wordplay. Ryan couldn't believe it, but the violent genius was quite lovely when nobody threatened her fragile ego. You're fucking shameless, she said. And here I thought you loved that girl though. I loved her once, yes, Ryan admitted. But that was a long, long time ago. Well, his devotion to Len had never wavered through the years, but Ryan no longer desired her romantically. He had been in romantic relationships in the past, all erased by time. At this point, the courier could settle for a friend, even an acquaintance who could recognize him. Someone with whom he could have a connection that would survive his endless travels across time, no matter how fragile. All Ryan wanted was someone who could alleviate his loneliness. No more, no less. The courier sighed. Moving kilometers below the sea gave him the blues. Are we there yet? Are you going to ask this every minute? Yes, until we are there. If you ask it again, you can say,
Goodbye.
to another A place, she replied. Are you coming on to me? The genius ignored him, the mech shaking. Ryan guessed that they must have landed somewhere. Are we, he started, Vulcan glaring at him over her shoulder, friends yet? You must have a death wish, the genius said, the cockpit's ceiling shifting. And as a matter of fact, we're here. About time. A hatch opened above the courier, alongside a mini ladder. Ryan could see a red lamp outside the metal suit, enshrined inside a rusted ceiling, but little else. I'll be waiting here, working on other stuff, Vulcan said, as Ryan started climbing out of the cockpit. Since you guys need some time alone. Just don't take too long, or I'll leave without you. You would leave a major investment stranded miles below the sea? Ryan mused, before nodding at the genius. Thanks. You did your job, I did mine. I ain't a fink, Ryan. Well, I certainly appreciate a woman of her word. It saddened Ryan a little since he might bypass all these fetch quests in the future, depending on how things turned out now. He would have to find a way to balance the scales. The courier climbed out of the mech, standing atop the suit. The room looked like an airlock, albeit one big enough to house something as large as Vulcan's suit. Walls of steel surrounded Ryan, thick enough to withstand the undersea pressure outside. Vulcan's machine stood with its boots in a puddle of water, enormous closed gates at the back, a smaller human-sized door at the front. While a lamp provided a dim crimson light, Ryan didn't notice any camera. Shorty, he asked, before leaping off the mech and onto the puddle. When he received no answer, he moved towards the smaller door. No sooner did he approach it, that he heard a sound coming from behind. The gate opened on its own, spurred on by an automatic mechanism. Carefully, Ryan stepped out of the undersea airlock, and into an apartment. Well, it looked like an apartment, albeit one sparsely furnished. It was around 50 meters square, including a main resting room, a small kitchen, and doors leading to what Ryan assumed to be a bedroom and bathroom. The walls were painted blue and red, her favorite colors. The whole place smelled of her presence. Where's that Jamaican crab to sing a song when you need him? Ryan whistled to himself, finding this place too silent for his liking. Yet he didn't see any stereo nearby. The courier moved towards the kitchen, noticing a fridge. When he opened it, Ryan found an assortment of tasty dishes straight from the sea, crabs, fishes, algae. A tube seemed to provide the food from another part of the complex. The courier tested the sink next. It worked perfectly, but clearly hadn't been used much lately. Shorty, where are you? Ryan then wandered towards the main resting room, made of a sofa and a plastic table. Instead of a TV, the main room's sofa faced a massive porthole allowing sitters to see the world outside, namely, an undersea abyss as dark as the blackest night. Strange fish looked on the other side of the reinforced glass, perhaps curious or attracted by the strange house's warmth. The courier noticed a pile of books on the table, including Vingt mille loups sous les mers, the exact same book Len found in Venezia all those years before, alongside Karl Marx's compiled Das Kapital, and Hegel's Elements of the Philosophy of Right. Some things never changed. However, much to his alarm, the courier also noticed a large amount of medications next to that mini-library. Ryan quickly analyzed them, identifying the products as dynamines-made antidepressants and anxiolytics. Powerful ones too. Ryan didn't know Len's self-medication treatment details, but it was clearly unhealthy. As the courier walked in front of the porthole and peeked through, he noticed other sources of light in the darkness. On a closer look, they came from other portholes in sphere-shaped structures, an egg nest at the very bottom of the abyss. A complex set of corridors linked the structures together, forming a vast community. Did Len build that? Certainly not in 6 months, even with Vulcan's help and funding. She must have spent at least a year slowly building this place, going to New Rome when she needed specific technology she couldn't manufacture herself. If each habitat was a self-sufficient apartment, then there was enough space to house hundreds of people. Silly Len, she was building her own undersea Khrushchevka. But still, this place felt like it lacked a soul. There was no personal touch, no warmth to it. All the accommodations were utilitarian, meant to cover a human being's basic needs without any aestheticism whatsoever. Besides the books, Ryan didn't notice any source of entertainment or even a photo. This place was a brightly colored undersea tomb, nothing more. He heard another door open behind him, perhaps the bedroom's one. She didn't make a sound at first, yet he could sense her eyes peering at his back. She didn't dare say anything, so Ryan broke the ice. "Hi Shorty," the courier said, looking over his shoulder. "It's been way too long." It was her. She was both so familiar, and yet so different. But it was her, unmistakably her. She wore a brown diving suit, albeit not the towering armor as in the last loop, alongside some kind of water rifle. Len had had a growth spurt since the 4 years they last met, although she was still small enough for him to tease her. Her teenage cuteness had blossomed into a true beauty, albeit one lessened by exhaustion and the pale complexion of her skin. She clearly didn't go out often enough. They both needed to take a vacation. Riri, Len smiled, but it was more sadness than joy. Her voice was music to Ryan's ears, yet she sounded so weak and anxious. It had been so long since he had heard that nickname, that the courier had almost forgotten it. It awakened old emotions he had long since buried through decades of time looping. Happiness, and sadness too. She looked so terrible, her eyes blackened by tiredness and antidepressants, that it made Ryan feel guilty not to have found her before. It was his job to make her happy, and she clearly wasn't. Ryan fully turned around to hug his oldest friend, but she took a step back when she saw him move from his spot. He froze in place, confused, while the sofa stood between them like an insurmountable barrier. Don't come closer," Len pleaded, a hand on her water rifle. She wasn't pointing it at him, but she didn't set it aside either. "Please." "Shorty, what's wrong?" Ryan asked. This wasn't the reception he had hoped for, let alone expected. "It's me. I've been looking everywhere for you." "I know," she replied. "I know." Ryan tensed up at these words. "For how long?" His best friend looked away, before finally confessing, 2 years. Ryan froze, as his reality came crashing down. He had always refused to entertain the thought, even if deep down, he knew it was the only logical explanation. Ryan had made so many waves across Italy, he thought that if Len was alive, then she would have contacted him. If she didn't, he believed it meant that she was dead, captured, or in a terrible position. Ryan never wanted to accept the most likely scenario. Namely, that she avoided him on purpose. "Why?" Ryan asked, feeling as if he had been shot in the gut. "Why? Why did you avoid me?" She didn't answer immediately, not with her voice, but her body spoke for her. Her trembling hands, her unease in Ryan's presence. The courier couldn't believe it. "You're afraid of me?" "No," she said. "It's just, your presence." "You have PTSD," Ryan recognized the symptoms, glancing at the pile of medications. Suddenly, it all started to make sense. "I remind you of the bad days. I remind you of Bloodstream. I'm an open wound." "Riri, your power," Len shook her head, "it's done something to your mind. I can see it. You're not stable. Your behavior, it's not that of a sane person." "Len, I'm not insane," Ryan protested. I just get the joke. You don't get anything, she accused the courier. You never did. You killed him. The words echoed across the undersea habitat, an awkward silence settling in. You led the carnival to us, Len accused him. You didn't pull the trigger, but you brought the gun. I did, Ryan admitted. He had an eternity to ponder his choice. And it had to be done. My only regret is that it separated us for years. More silence. Len had never been good at articulating her feelings, but all these years had only worsened her social skills. He wondered if she had any people to talk to. Len, the courier said. Your father was never going to get better, and one day, he would have killed you. He almost did. I spent years studying the nature of genomes, trying to find a solution to the psycho condition, see if I could have made it right. But there is no cure. Or at least none I could design with the means at hand. Even Ryan, for all his power over time and causality, hadn't dared take 2 elixirs, for powers worked on a level far greater than mere gene manipulation. Another elixir would cause his original power to mutate, maybe create another save point or permanently leave him mad. If Ryan ever became a psycho like Bloodstream, with his save point, no one would be able to stop him. It would be an unending nightmare, for himself and countless others. I know, Len admitted. I know. But he was still my dad. That wasn't your choice to make. Ryan put his hands behind his back, studying her for a moment. Then, he removed his hat and mask, so she could see his true face. The gnawing unhappiness beneath the smile. I apologize, Ryan said, and he meant it. I'm sorry I hurt you. Len looked into his eyes, and then glanced away, unable to hold his gaze. The sight hurt way worse than acid rain's knives. He bore witness to the end of his main quest, and it wasn't a happy ending. Why did you make this place? Ryan asked, glancing at the habitat. Perhaps there was something he had overlooked, a detail that could let him salvage their friendship. For me, she said. Then for others. The orphans above, Ryan guessed. That's what this place is for. Yes, she said, looking at the distant lights through the porthole. I want to bring them here when it's finished. Give them a place where they can belong, begin again. Make it right. Len, you can't retreat from the world, even if it's harsh and absurd, Ryan said. Or else you will lose part of yourself too. Look at you, you're miserable, Len. You're not happy living like this. Riri, there's nothing above for them, or for me, Len argued. There's just violence and psychos and powerful bastards kicking down the little guy. I thought the bombs had wiped the slate clean, but more than a decade afterward, it's more of the same. If that's how you feel, then let's make it better, Ryan said. I can help. I've got all the time in the universe to fix it. I can make everything right. I'm already fixing it. I'm making a new, better place. A place where everyone is equal. No, you're running away from your problems, just as I did, Ryan argued. The medications are dulling the pain, but they won't make it go away. No matter how many times you repeat the same process, the outcome won't change. Neither will this place help you. It's sunken. You're literally sinking, Len. He extended a hand. Let me help you, the courier asked her, begged her. Once, you wanted to explore the world. We can do it. Travel together, and look beyond the horizon. There's still so much to do, so much to learn. I've seen things you can't even imagine. I can show them to you. We can start over. Len looked at his fingers, and for long, agonizing seconds, she looked tempted to take his hand. If only she would, then their days of loneliness would finally end. But she didn't take it, held back by her own fears. Crushed at the sight, Ryan realized it wouldn't do. She was too hurt, too wounded, to take the risk. Their friendship was an old wound she feared might fester again, and sink her deeper below the sea. He was just making things worse. The world is absurd, Ryan declared. But it's not hopeless. She frowned at him, confused. I've faced the same situation over 10,000 iterations, and made a different choice each time, he explained. If it was all hopeless, then nothing should have changed. A single man can't make any difference, right? That's fatalism for you. Well, fatalists are cowardly crybabies. Every choice I made led to a different outcome. Sometimes it changed little, other times, it changed everything. Sometimes, I killed people, and other times, I saved them. Where? I don't understand, where are you getting at? That in the end, my decisions changed things, Ryan said. Even if I was the only one who could see it. It doesn't matter if the change is big or small. The change exists. Yes, bad things often happen for no reason, and sometimes good things too. While not guaranteed, justice is attainable. Nobody is in control of anything, but that doesn't mean your actions have no impact. So please, Len, don't ever say it's hopeless. If time travel has taught me anything, it's that everything can change, and the perfect ending is always within reach. Time travel? Instead of burdening her with his own issues, Ryan put the quick-save mask and hat back on, then walked towards the hatch's door. She didn't make a move to stop him. Even if she seemed to hesitate. No matter how bad it gets, Len, I won't give up on finding happiness, he said, looking over his shoulder at his old friend. I hope you don't either. Ryan walked away, his silent steps echoing below the sea. 24. Transition. It was a bright new day in New Rome. The sun was rising. Bullets were flying. Rats were singing. Standing at the balcony of Jamie's apartment in casual clothes, a coffee mug in his right hand, Ryan glanced at the rodents occupying the area. Ki-young's rat seemed to be doing some stretching exercises while dawn rose beyond the horizon, showing incredible levels of flexibility. They were cute, for enormous mutant rodents. But Ryan was a cat person at heart, and he was in a foul mood. He grabbed his cell phone with his left hand and played pre-recorded music he had prepared just for the occasion. The terrible noise of felines meowing echoed across the apartment, startling the rats and sending them into a frenzied panic. They immediately dispersed, hiding beneath the sofa. Ryan! Ki-young shouted from the kitchen, busy making breakfast. Stop it! What? He asked innocently, the rats glancing at Ryan upon realizing his trick. It's not forbidden to listen to cat music. I'm not forbidden to throw you off the balcony either. What is all the racket? Jamie emerged from his bedroom, wearing only a shirt and boxers. Without his armor, he reminded Ryan of a grizzly bear emerging from his cave. The first thing the mob enforcer did was to kiss his girlfriend, then join the courier at the balcony with a coffee cup of his own. Nothing, Ryan replied, hiding his cell phone. Ki-young's rats emerged from their hiding spots to gather behind his back, glaring at him. Seeing a dozen rats in that position may have frightened a normal person, but the courier just meowed at them. You're impossible, Jamie replied, his eyes blinked as he slowly woke up. A rat jumped on the balcony's ramp, the genome scratching it between the ears. How are you feeling? Whimsically peachy. Ryan, Jamie looked at him in the eye. How do you really feel? Was he that bad at hiding it? Ryan looked at the distant, warming sun. I don't feel anything. Anything as in? Nothing, Ryan replied with a sigh. I feel empty. Well, to be precise, he felt like someone whose years-long quest had ended disastrously. Ryan had expected a happy reunion that would make everything better, and he had only found more tears and sadness. Emptiness had been his natural state for years, until learning of Len's survival had given him a newfound direction. His endless existence finally had a purpose. Except Len didn't want Ryan in her life. Hell, she was an even bigger wreck than he was. But I'm used to it, the courier replied with optimism. That just means I've just got to find something to fill the void. Even that stunt with the rats was an attempt to get his mind off Len. He had found chaos and whimsical jokes a welcome distraction when in a bad mood. Confusion energized him, while introspection made him feel stale and restless. Jamie shook his head, before looking at the sunlight too. I'm sorry. About what? About your girl. I'm sorry she broke your heart. I haven't been dumped, Ryan protested since he clearly had misunderstood the situation. I know rejection is painful, Zanbato consoled him, digging himself deeper. And that's okay. It happens to everyone. She wasn't the right person for you, or perhaps now was not the right moment. You're still young, you will find someone. For empty platitudes, Jamie managed to make them sound inspired. Maybe because he earnestly tried to cheer him up. The worst part is, Ryan said, letting out some frustration instead of bottling it up, she's in pain, and I don't know how to help yet. His words seemed to resonate with Jamie, who opened his mouth without saying anything, seemingly rehearsing his words in his head. He glanced at the rats and told them to shoo away. The rodents let out a vengeful screech at Ryan and then moved to the kitchen. You know, one day, a former friend and I found someone having an overdose. A homeless woman. Jamie spoke once the rats out of earshot, his voice breaking. She would have died if we hadn't been there. Ryan could sense the sheer emotion brimming in Jamie's voice, and said nothing. It clearly came from the heart. Even when she was out of the hospital, I considered her my responsibility. I tried to help her clean herself up. It was hard. It was really hard. It took months to deal with the relapses, the bad habits, and help her find a job. A lot of my friends, they didn't understand. They thought I was just wasting my time. That she was hopeless. But she wasn't. It worked out. It was hard, but she recovered. Ryan glanced at the kitchen and Ki-young's shadow. People take time to heal, Jamie said. And from what I heard, that girl seems to have pretty deep scars. Don't give up and do your best, but don't beat yourself over it either. Ryan nodded but didn't respond. I talked with the others, Jamie said, swallowing his coffee without savoring it the way Ryan did, and we will organize a party next Thursday at the house. To welcome you in New Rome. A Hugh Hefner party, or a friendly housewarming party. Genome only, most of whom are single. Hugh Hefner then. Wait, are you going to whore me out? Am I to pay the rent in my flesh and blood? Don't worry about rent. However, everything that will happen during the party will stay at the party. You may see weird stuff. The more Jamie spoke, the more embarrassed he sounded. Stuff that would shock most people. I think you're pretty open-minded, but I'm not sure how much. Since genomes were naturally immune to most diseases, including STDs, and had a high drug threshold, Ryan had a pretty good idea of how the party would degenerate. Oh, you know, without arrogance, the courier smiled, I've seen everything. Okay, good. No bliss or cats allowed, and you help clean up tomorrow morning, Jamie added firmly. Also, no matter what happens, don't fuck Vamp. You can hook up with anyone, but her. A forbidden romance route? How can I resist? By reminding yourself that she's a goddamn succubus who will drain you to death if you fall into her arms, Jamie said, with a hint of dislike. She's a nasty shade of green. Why invite her at all if you don't like her? She's part of the hit squad, and she takes it personally when she isn't invited to group events. Trust me, it's less drama that way. And Livia! Ki-young shouted from inside the apartment. Don't forget to tell him about Livia. And Livia too, thank you, honey. Jamie shouted back, before focusing on Ryan. She's off limits for a reason I cannot divulge yet, but trust me. If you make a move on her, you will die. Jamie didn't know anything about reverse psychology, did he?
Nah.
The courier wasn't in the mood. I think I will pass on the matchmaking attempt, Ryan said, bored with romance. I've had my fair share of hookups. Really? Jamie didn't hide his surprise. I didn't take you for a party animal. Or at least, not that kind. At one point in my life, my motto was, try them all until you find the perfect one, Ryan explained. But afterward, it became stale and superficial. It was just doing the same thing over and over again. I think I see what you mean. Also, why are you advocating for me to fight for true love, and then try to hook me up with someone else? No, I said, you don't give up on helping your friend with her issues, but if she isn't interested, take the hint and look for companionship elsewhere. Jamie put a hand on Ryan's shoulder, overflowing with warm dad radiations. I know it's a leap of faith, but I'm sure you will find someone that can make you happy at that party. That's all I wish for you. Ryan turned towards the apartment. Ki-young. Yes, she replied, busy making lunch. If you don't marry this man, I will do it myself. I don't share, she replied with a deadpan tone. I told you that you had the same sense of humor, Jamie said, putting a hand on Ryan's shoulder. Both genomes returned to the kitchen, putting their empty cups in the sink. By then, Ki-young had cooked a big brunch for her man and herself. However, she also handed a lunchbox to Ryan. Here, she said. For midday. It's bibimbap, so I hope you like rice and vegetables. It's fine, I was going to grab a sand. Take it, she insisted, all but shoving the lunchbox in Ryan's arms. Knowing Vulcan, she won't let you out of her workshop until she has worked you to the bone. God damn it, these guys were so nice, it was almost oppressive. They were killing him with kindness. His lunchbox under his arm, Ryan prepared to leave for work but stopped in front of Longka's bedroom first. Sleeping Beauty? The courier knocked. It's the police, wake up. Hands on your head. He heard a groan behind the door, alongside the sound of empty bottles falling to the ground. Is it 3 in the afternoon already? No. Then fuck off. Come to think of it, she remained awake very late into the night. She probably worked evening shifts. After putting on his quick-save costume, Ryan waltzed out of the house, put the lunchbox on the back seat, and then drove the Plymouth Fury away. Even at this early hour, traffic in New Rome was insane, reminding the courier of the worst hours of the pre-war era. Right after leaving the suburbs, he found himself trapped in a jam. The courier opened the windows and put on the radio, singing to himself when he found the Pink Panthers song. Tada, tada, tada tada tada, curse Henry Mancini and his catchy tune. He needed a cheery song, especially after last night. The reunion's disastrous ending had gnawed at him all evening, as he tried to figure out a way to help Len get over her issues. Unfortunately, he saw none yet, or at least none that wouldn't make things worse. Ryan had gained a certain insight into human nature through his loops. His best friend seemed so far gone into her shell, that forcing himself into her life would worsen things. She needed to reach out to others first. But if not him, then whom? The orphans? How did it fit? His main quest had ended in a disaster, and Ryan didn't know what to do next. Well, now that he had somewhat fulfilled his main goal, the courier could devote his time to do side quests instead of starting a new loop. He had promised different people to drive the meta out of Rust Town and to blow up the Augustes super lab, and the courier would be true to his word. Afterward though, he didn't know. Finding Len had been the driving force of his existence lately, a welcome intermission in his meaningless wandering. If he couldn't help her, then... No, he couldn't allow himself to think this way. There was a way to solve this, he just needed time to figure it out. Don't turn around. Ryan turned around in the back seat but saw nothing. The green giant is in the garden, he said. The green giant is in the garden. No answer. You're supposed to say a code, Ryan replied, looking back at the road. What if I were a shapeshifter? You would have blown your cover. Frankly, you should leave the real work to professionals. The orange is in the hen house? See, you're learning. How was your reunion with Len Sabino? The shroud asked, clearly sitting in the back while invisible. The courier wondered if he had waited all morning, just to surprise Ryan as he took off to work. Were you peeping? Ryan sighed. Not all that great, but I handled it like a champ. I am thankful you didn't rat me out once your goal was achieved, Shroud replied, blatantly ignoring the question. That makes me trust you a bit more. Is there an actual reason you want to visit me, or do you just spook people on principle? You wanted me to keep you updated on the meta gang, and you are supposed to report how things are advancing on your side. Shouldn't you already know? Ryan asked, quite certain the invisible jackass had kept him under tight surveillance. I'm in. You have infiltrated the Augusti, but not the right part of the organization, the glass man said. Bacchus leads the drug division, not Vulcan. The road to complete a quest often takes twists and turns, Ryan replied, raising his finger and delivering his wisdom. Sometimes, you must wait for the right opportunity. Like your party? Shroud mused. I will wait longer, but the deal is off without meaningful progress. For an infiltrator he wasn't very subtle about thinly veiled threats. How about our psycho friends? Ryan changed the subject. Did you clean out the trash yet? They have a sensor, warning system, or maybe a seer. Shroud sighed. Whenever I move too close to the junkyard, they send a heavy hitter after me. Neither invisibility nor disguises helped. All right, so no stealth mission. What else? Psyshock. Didn't you deal with him? Ryan asked, remembering his previous message. Yes. More than once. Ryan looked at the streetlight. Regenerators are annoying, aren't they? Yes. Then the invisible jackass dropped the bomb. But not as much as duplicators. Ryan didn't move an inch. I tried to capture him at the orphanage, Shroud explained, but he killed himself rather than become a prisoner. Impossible. The only thing nearly as strong as a psycho's addiction was their survival instinct. Especially old ones like Psyshock, who had survived for more than a decade. Unless... You said they sent heavy hitters after you, Ryan guessed. Including him? Including Psyshock, whose original remains are still in my possession. Shroud's visor became briefly visible, reflecting the dawn's light. That scenario should remind you of someone else. Bloodstream. Len's father had had an incredibly loathsome cloning power, as ghastly as it was effective. It had made him nigh unbeatable for years until the carnival tracked all his doubles down and managed to prevent him from duplicating. Psyshock had seen it in action. Could it have inspired him? If his duplication works the same as Bloodstream, Ryan trailed, his hands clenching on the driving wheel. I'll take it personally. I can't confirm it, Shroud replied. But I thought you should know. If you learn anything new, please inform me. Or I will deliver the pieces, Ryan replied. Anything else? Bacchus, alias Andreas Torque, is a blue, Shroud explained. He can drive others mad with visions and hallucinations, though I do not know what triggers his power. Tread against him carefully. I don't have a lot of information on his person, except that he is an excommunicated priest. He rarely leaves the super lab, and only to visit Augustus. If you want to get into the division, you will need to reach him through an intermediary. Great, a new chain quest. I suppose I won't get a reward for it? No answer. The courier turned his head around, touched the back seat with his hand, and sensed nothing. Not even a calling card. Wait. That bastard had stolen the lunchbox. 25, never enough DACA. Vulcan's workshop echoed with the sound of welding, while Ryan reviewed an armor sketch, ass on a chair and legs on the workbench. Ryan's job as Vulcan's assistant turned out to be more desk work than anything exciting like target practice. She handed him designs for new armor, guns, or vehicles, and then asked him to review and improve on them. As he examined her sketches, the courier realized that Vulcan's genius power was probably weapon creation. All her inventions either had an offensive application or served to support weaponry. The genius could even make cyber warfare programs, like viruses capable of detonating cell phones from afar. While it made Vulcan a devastatingly dangerous genius, you couldn't make a vehicle with just guns. She never patched her armor's joints' weakness, simply because her power refused to entertain innovative solutions in theory unrelated to warfare. No wonder Vulcan desperately wanted a genius assistant. She was a missile without a tripod. So, let me get this straight, Vulcan asked, welding a new cannon to her armor's right arm. Underdiver doesn't want you in her life, and Zanbato suggested you persevere? Pretty much, Ryan replied, scribbling notes on her sketch. He always found genius tech to be an interesting intellectual challenge, which was why he had devoted so many loops to studying it. Oh, and he's also throwing a party Thursday night. Well, Jamie doesn't know shit, the genius snapped back angrily. I fucking hate white knights, and Underdiver doesn't need one. She doesn't need anyone. I'm not sure. Can you even fathom that girl's sheer potential? Vulcan interrupted him. At least a third of the Earth is uninhabitable nowadays, and she can make self-sustaining habitats that can survive deep oceanic pressure. I'm making weapons, but her? She's building the future. I could do without her tech, yes. But the money I send her? It's an investment for mankind. She stopped welding, put her tool and iron mask away, and wiped away the sweat with her hand. White knights, they're smothering, she ranted, grabbing a water bottle and taking a sip. They don't help because they're nice, but because they're needy. They're oppressive. What your girl needs is self-confidence, and she's only going to develop that by building something that is hers alone. So if you really like that Len girl, don't get in her way. If you want to help, don't help. It didn't sound at all like psychological projection. Not at all. I'm sure there's an interesting story behind that opinion, the courier teased her. Wyvern was the worst of the White Knights, casting everyone in her shadow, she replied, as Ryan had guessed. You think she's being a hero because she really believes in justice? It's all ego. Self-righteousness. She wants the cheering children, people looking up to her, without making the hard decisions. If she really wanted to change things, she would have ditched dynamis long ago. But she didn't. But what did she do to you personally? Ryan asked, a bit confused. Haven't you been listening? She kept me in her shadow. When we started, I was the brain and she was the brawn. I gathered intel and made the plans. She's powerful, but she's a mace. All the force in the world doesn't matter if nobody can wield it in the right direction. The genius continued, going into a rant, venting off. Her voice dripped with bitterness and anger, her fingers crushing the now empty plastic bottle. Wyvern became famous because of me, but she was always the one in the field. The hero everyone talked about. And when we made a deal with Dynamis, it got worse. I wanted their resources to build myself a suit, make a name for myself. Become Wyvern's partner, instead of her sidekick. But they kept me in a lab, vetoed all my plans. I can make any weapon, the likes that rival Mechrans, but to the Monada. I was just the girl making their soldiers' armor. Let's make a gun then. A gun, she frowned. A very big gun, Ryan said. A laser gun that can draw a logo on the moon. Why would I draw a logo on the moon? To copyright it. Vulcan raised a finger, remained silent as she considered his sentence in death, and finally realized that she had no answer to it. I defeated you with logic. Ryan gloated. In response, Vulcan threw her plastic bottle at him, although with a thin smirk at the edge of her lip. She moved towards the courier and grabbed the sketch, reviewing his additions. Interesting idea, though it's useless in the rain, she said, before raising an eyebrow. Why is there a duck drawn in the bottom left corner? I got bored halfway through. She wanted him to review a stealth model of armor, capable of blending into the environment. Invisible Lunch Thief had given Ryan the idea to use optic cameras to record the wearer's surroundings, and then portray them on the surface. You don't enter a fugue state while working, she noted. Curious, curious. Nice work, a voice spoke from behind Ryan. I want one. Why thank you, the courier said, peeking over his shoulder to welcome the newcomer. A genome had entered the room, somehow without opening the only door. It was a tall, lanky figure whose costume reminded Ryan of a scarecrow. A ghoulish, metal skull mask hid the face, and a black hooded cloak the rest of the body. Most importantly, that gentle devil seemed as fond of weapons as the courier, carrying guns on bandoliers and a sniper rifle. TCH, not even spooked, the man complained, although Ryan wasn't sure it was a guy at all. The skull mask digitally altered the voice, even if it sounded vaguely male. You're not fun. Mortimer, stop bullying the newbie, said Sparrow, as Pluto's bodyguard entered the room through the door. Instead of her absent mistress, she was followed by Cancel and a new face. Sorry, quick save, he gets off on startling people. Hi Ryan, hi Jasmine. Greta waved a hand at them with an endearing smile. Hi, Greta. Ryan returned the greeting, though he paid more attention to the third person in the group. It was a young woman his physical age, and gorgeous. Not pretty gorgeous, but top model gorgeous. A hazel-eyed blonde whose hair fell down to her hips, with tanned skin and a perfectly chiseled face, this Venus could probably bring any man to his knees in adoration. Even her bright white clothes and jewelry were the apex of new Roman fashion, things Ryan would have expected to see on an actress. Unfortunately, from the way she carried herself, her appearance had clearly gone to her head. She moved with such pompous pride and self-confidence, it was almost nauseating. But Ryan didn't care about her beauty. He cared about her resemblance to a certain feline. Unfortunately, she mistook his rapturous attention as something else. I'm Fortuna, the bombshell introduced herself, the courier immediately remembering the name as one of Adam Cat's sisters, the world's luckiest woman. Ryan chuckled. If you have met me, no, you aren't. Oh, really? She moved in front of a metal wall and put her hands on her waist. Shoot me. You're sure? The courier asked for confirmation. Yes. Shoot me. Okay. Ryan immediately rose from his chair, pulled his Desert Eagle out of his coat, and then fired with enthusiasm. The suddenness of the gesture startled Fortuna's teammates, although they made no move to step in. When he ran out of bullets, Ryan didn't bother reloading. Instead, he threw the gun away, pulled another sidearm in his arsenal, and fired away. When he emptied the magazine, the cycle continued with new weapons. AMT Hardballer, Browning High Power, Beretta 92 FS Inox, Gold-plated Beretta 92 FS Inox, CZ75, Glock 17, 2 Glock 17L, Sistema Colt Modello 1927, Stechkin APS, because the Russians made the best guns, followed by a Smith & Wesson Model 629. He's persistent, Mortimer muttered, Ryan almost unable to hear him over the sound of gunfire. That's a lot of weapons, Sparrow noted. Where does he find the space? The only certainty in life is that when death comes for you, you will never have enough guns. Ryan shouted. His gloves fumed with gunpowder. At that point, armored guards entered the workshop, perhaps expecting a shootout. They looked at the scene, Ryan glanced back, and froze time. When time resumed, the guards found their submachine guns missing, the courier wielding both as he opened fire on Fortuna. Vulcan raised a hand at the confused guards, who wisely returned to their post with confusion and sheepish embarrassment. When he ran out of small arms after 10 minutes of non-stop shooting, Ryan moved on to shotguns, bombarding the model with a Remington Model 870. Then he upgraded to his coil gun, and finally threw almost every single knife he had. He only had 2 surprises left. Ryan paused, as his hand didn't find the first of his prized weapons. Hey, where did my A-bomb go? I took it while you were busy shooting, Vulcan said, raising the metal sphere in her hand. I knew it would come down to this. Give it back. Quicksave pleaded like a child, but Vulcan kept the bomb out of arm's reach. Give it back. Impressed yet? Ryan turned to look at Fortuna, who stood completely unharmed while the wall behind her had turned into Swiss cheese. She didn't have a single scratch. Not a single one. And he was only 3 steps away, shooting at point-blank range. God damn it, now Ryan felt like a stormtrooper in Star Wars. That's a Pulp Fiction level of divine providence, the courier admitted. Although, the young woman replied with one of the smuggest grins the courier had ever seen. I have a secret technique, Ryan said, abandoning the use of nuclear weapons to get back to his trusty knife. Which, if I use, will cut your hopes short. I must warn you though. Nobody ever managed to stand up to it. She silently told him to bring it. All right, she asked for it. Zawarudo. Time stopped, the workshop turning purple. Ryan quickly glanced at Cancel, as frozen in time as the others. As he suspected, her negation power offered no automatic defense, she had to switch it on and off. Good to know. Ryan memorized that information for later. He took 3 steps towards Fortuna, expecting to slip up through her ridiculous luck, but he didn't. His power trumped her own. The courier briefly wondered where he should hit her, hesitating about giving her a light cut, but that sounded a bit too savage. Instead, as Amerindians scalped their victims as trophies, he swiftly cut her blonde hair to shoulder length with his sharp knife, keeping the rest for himself. Zawarudo, hairdresser style. She may be lucky, but in this world of frozen time, the courier ruled without equal. Toki wa Tamar, Ryan spoke in Japanese, quickly returning to his original spot in the nick of time, before his power ran out. When the clock turned again, Fortuna let out a ghastly wail of horror and surprise, which startled Ryan by its intensity. Greta didn't flinch. Mortimer glanced down at his teammate's hair with what appeared to be quiet satisfaction, and Vulcan. Vulcan didn't pay attention to the girl. She only had eyes for one handsome courier. You cut my hair. Fortuna protested, her arrogance replaced with shock. You cut my hair. What? Her stylist probably did that every month, and that woman reacted as if she had been stabbed. You asked for it, he replied, putting the cut hair inside his coat. Now, I shall keep your hair as a war trophy. How could you? She replied with noble indignation. Have you no respect? Mademoiselle, I believe in true equality, Ryan declared. Equality of gender, of religion, of race. All shall suffer without discrimination. I have no chivalry, no scruples, no respect for the elderly, and I'm utterly colorblind. Doesn't matter which gods you pray to, none of them will help. Beautiful or ugly, I shall torment without respite. Fortuna didn't share his civilized point of view, but Ryan guessed such was the lot of those ahead of their time. Morty, Greta, Fortuna clenched her teeth, say something. Serves you right, Mortimer rasped, unsympathetic. All the times you mocked poor Mortimer, because he couldn't hit you. Not so smug now. Wait, is this the first time someone managed to wound her? Vulcan asked, curious. I never use my power on my teammates, Greta replied, her expression ever cheerful. Ryan thought that her behavior had gone from endearing to positively creepy. Hey, don't look at me like that, the courier told the crybaby, who kept glaring at him. If anything, I'm the victim. You? Her glare morphed into a confused expression. Yes, I grant you your wish, obey your command without flinching, and I only get ungratefulness in return. Truly, I don't think we'll ever be friends. Fortuna merely stared at him, unable to form a coherent answer. All right, enough with the bullshit. Vulcan clapped to get everyone's attention. Quick save, these are the Killer 7. Our organization's hit squad. I must be bad at math because I only count 4, Ryan deadpanned. We're 6 with the Vamp and Night Terror, Sparrow replied. The former isn't good for direct combat, and the latter's power only works in the dark. Wait, Ryan immediately asked the important question. Why do you call yourself the Killer 7 when you're only 6? We started at 7 when Boss Pluto led us, 1 for each color, Mortimer answered. But since she mostly does admin nowadays, we've rotated between 4 to 6 members depending on turnover. The name stuck though. Killer 7 is catchier than Killer 6, you know? Only Mortimer and I remain out of the original lineup, Sparrow explained. We were each a different color. We would need a violet to complete the set, Greta said, grinning at Ryan. Want to join? I veto that proposal, Fortuna said immediately. Me too, Mortimer added with a shrug. He's new meat. But we don't have a violet to complete the rainbow, Cancel complained. Greta, you cannot invite an unproven recruit, Sparrow said, before looking at Ryan. Nothing personal, quick save. Our missions are the most sensitive, so we only welcome genomes with an extensive history of loyalty towards our organization. Maybe in a few years. Don't poach my boys, Vulcan shot down the idea. I'm sorry, but I can't get past the name thing, Ryan pointed out. I mean, if you aren't able to commit to a theme, you should find another one entirely. What? Next you're going to tell me Sparrow's supervillain name has nothing to do with her superpower? Sparrow answered with a forced smile. Ryan glanced at her with disbelief. It doesn't? She shoots lasers, Mortimer said. Sort of. I find sparrows adorable, the genome replied, embarrassed. They're my favorite animals, and the name wasn't taken. What's wrong with you people? Ryan complained, disappointed. No respect for tradition and proper branding. I'll give you a brand, you crazy, Fortuna mumbled, still reeling from the humiliation. Enough chit-chat, Vulcan said, growing frustrated with the banter. I gathered you to attack the meta gang today. We will drive them out of Rust Town, even if we have to fight them city block by city block. "'Bout time," Mortimer snickered. Ryan may actually fulfill most of his goals in this loop. Could this run finally improve after the disastrous reunion with Len? "What about our armor?" Sparrow asked the important question. "I've designed variants for each of you." Vulcan glanced at Ryan. "With one exception. I'll pass." Frankly, while he understood the appeal of armor, Ryan preferred mobility over defense, since his power made death a non-issue. As for stealthy versions, well, he wouldn't dress in bright colors if he didn't want to be seen. "Even one that enhances your power?" Ryan squinted his eyes at the genius. "You can't." "Mekran could enhance powers," she replied, annoyed. "That's how he recruited his few living followers." "Yes, Mekran." It said something about Vulcan, that she took the comparison to the world's most powerful genius as a challenge. "I can make armor which enhances the user's power, though I need to study it in depth. I managed to do so for our fireman division. They took the firebrand knockoff elixirs, which grants pyrokinesis," Sparrow said. "You've probably seen one in New Rome. They're very popular." "Maybe?" He didn't pay attention to extras. "How much firepower did they gain?" "They went from throwing embers to fireballs," Vulcan boasted, putting a finger on her chin. "Now imagine what your power could do." This was a trap. Ryan had noticed it the moment Pluto interrogated him at Jamie's place. His power fascinated Vulcan to an unhealthy level, perhaps because she suspected he lied about its particularities. That was only an excuse to lower his guard, so she may gather data. And yet, Ryan had struggled for years to explore his power, and he knew he hadn't tapped into its full potential yet. If he could enhance his power, create multiple save points, or move his current one further back into the past. "I will think about it."